Hello. I think there are only three links this day, but I might go on a bit. I don't know. So this opening chart, gross repayments of lending secured on dwellings seasonally adjusted long run. It doesn't really matter. I'll tell you all about it. These are in pounds because it's the UK, but it kind of applies to the Western world. And I'm going to try from this chart and tell you a bit of a story. Now, we can see this one's going back to 1999, and it's how much you pay off on your mortgage. About something like that. And you can see it goes up and up, that they're paying more and more on their mortgage from a small number, under 20, and it's gone to over 70. So it's a huge rise. But till the crash in 2007. That was not so much of a housing crash in the UK yet. But I just want to talk a bit of psychology behind all this sort of stuff today. 1999 to 2007, spending more and more on mortgage payments because the central bank is getting a bit worried that it's getting a bit out of control and is putting interest rates up, and people are spending more and more on their mortgages. A bit like yesterday I did that chart of how much of your disposable income is going on debt repayment. That was in America, but it was all pretty similar. It went up from, 11 to 14% of your disposable income was going on debt repayments. A similar thing here. But we also have to think, we know that, let's say 14% of your household disposable income is going on mortgage repayments, for example. But you know that the price of the house you're making your net worth is growing, let's say 15 or 20% per year. So although your debt repayments are going up, and you're paying 14% of your disposable income on debt repayments, completely on the opposite side of that is your wealth is going up 15%, even more. So you're actually winning every single year. And life was so super. Right. So what's happened now is because of the, let's say, credit crunch. That's the best way of describing it. The central bank was caused to do different things. We'll not go into any of the acronym stuff of different lendings, but we know that the interest rate, what we call the interest rate, was brought down. And people, again, we can refer back to that chart of yesterday, their debt repayments were brought down from 14 to down towards that low number again of 11. And here we can see they were paying out 70 billion. Now they're paying out half that at 35 billion. Now, the central bank has got a bit of a problem here because they've done it. Let's say there's different ways of saying it, but I'll say it this way. They dropped the interest rates down to save the banks because they knew that if the interest rate stayed up, the variable rate mortgages would be more expensive. More people were laid off in the economy, they wouldn't be able to afford the mortgages and would default more, and the bank's books would come under pressure. Let's put it that way. We could put that as an angle that it helps the people, or an angle that it helps the government, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But the interest rates went down. The people, especially on variable rate mortgages, were paying a lot less debt repayment. But what did they do with that debt repayment? This is the important thing from this video, and it's quite fun. Because they didn't start paying off more of their mortgages. You'd think that they might, because of that huge debt overhang that each individual person has, but they're really not. So they're just spending, basically. That's what the modern person does. They are, we don't like to call them consumers, but for this video, they are consumers. Or should we say we are consumers? I don't want to feel as though I'm putting myself above this. We are consumers. We're not people anymore. We're consumers. Now, okay, I'll just go on to the next link and then come back between the two. I'll see how I go. I don't know. This is the UK again, but again it applies to the United States of America, the Western world, to a greater extent. Ministers yesterday said they were alarmed by the figures and warned that millions of British workers were facing a poorer future when they retire. The new analysis by the Department for Work and Pensions found that the number of working age people saving into a private pension fell from 46% in 2000 down to 38% last year. The fall was most dramatic in people under the age of 40, while men are less likely to have saved for their retirement than women. 38% of people putting money away for their pension. Now, you can see their point of view, the people's point of view. Whereas if they got into this house thing, they were making money on the deal. They were buying a house and actually making money on it. You could even see their psychology, that they were making 15% a year. And now they're expected, well, where are they going to invest money safely? Well, they're going to get 1.5% a year. So they're just not going into pensions. I'll flick back for me to this chart to see if it flips any more things in my head. So the central bank has dropped the interest rates down. I'll tell you where I'm going to go and see if it helps me. Where, how, why, when would the central bank ever raise interest rates again? What would have to be the circumstances for them to raise interest rates again? And I'll tell you the analogy I've got. No, I'll be naughty first and say the modern people are behaving like children. Now, I want to put it that way so I could say afterwards, they're behaving like children because we've brought them up to behave like children. They're not a new genetically modified stock, this generation, that are behaving like children because of some unknown reason. They are behaving this way because the older generation, that's me, have taught them to act this way. Right. So the central bank has got this problem, and it's very much like parents with unruly teenagers. The modern people are behaving en masse like teenagers. Now, they're not tidying their room. But what can you do with them? Because they are kind of out there going, look, no, we are going to live on the edge. Pay packet to pay packet, salary to salary, month to month, week to week, whatever it is, and a great huge wedge of debt hanging there as well. And how can you punish them? How can you tell them that this isn't the way to lead a life, my lad or my lady? You can't, because any punishment just immediately pushes them over the edge, because they are walking down that edge of living pay packet to pay packet with a monstrous pile of debt on their back. You can't punish them. I can't see how the central banks can raise interest rates ever again. Now, what are governments going to do about it? Exactly the same problem. You can't, and in a way governments don't want to, because they're living on the edge, and the money that they are saving for paying variable rate less on their mortgage, they're buying chocolate and fluffy jumpers and going on skiing holidays. Now, this is monstrously awful for the future. Terrible for the future. It unsustainable, because the money's just being frittered away. It's not going into productive projects. But what the hell can you do about it? Now, over in Europe, they're thinking this austerity thing might be a gig. But you can see what you're going to get with this austerity is you're going to be austere on populations that are living on the edge. It's going to push them over the edge. And when your population is over the edge, your economy goes to shit. The only way of keeping your economy half decent is to just keep them on the right side of the edge. They've got the government and the central banks by the balls. And it's hilarious to watch. It is almost a perfect analogy to parents and the children, the teenagers that won't tidy their room. You can lay down the law, but they're so wild, these teenagers, that they'll just go off on one and do more damage to themselves and the people around them than it makes it worthwhile pushing the law through that they should have tidied their room. If, yes, in the past you had educated the children from a very young age to be responsible and tidy their room when it should be tidied, you wouldn't have got to this stage of having such unruly teenagers and have this problem of them going off on one. But for the last amount of years, they have not been brought up that way. Now, I'll just go over to, because I'm waffling a bit, go over to this last chart that I wanted to put out. Right down at the bottom, the source for this is the Bureau of Economic Analysis, National Statistics Online, Statistics Canada, and the Deutsche Bundesbank. What we have is household savings rates. Canada, United Kingdom, and the United States, up and down like a whore's drawers. Typical teenager action. Germany. Now, there's a slight chance that the Deutsche Bundesbank kind of flatten out these results to make it look good, but it doesn't move a damn anywhere. This goes back to 2003, and you can imagine it goes back an awful long way further. It's just 11%, and that is it. Oh. They have been brought up by other generations to live this way. Now, it's very unfortunate for them that this great amount of savings has been invested in the children below. Well, not so much Canada and America, but more in the peripheral children, the pigs that have spent it all on, chocolate pizza and fluffy jumpers and going off skiing. But you can see the difference. Now, we've got an interesting psychological point, that is it the Bundesbank and the German government that is making the people of Germany like that, or is it the people of Germany that are making the Bundesbank and the government of Germany like that? But there is an interaction, and when we're thinking how we are, how our children are, or how our grandparents were, the government and the central bank does have an integral part in it. But what we have now, and the fun that we're going to have in 2012, is watching the parents trying to get the kids to tidy their room. And just to see what the kids are gonna go off on one. And I think they are. And it's going to be a real battle of wills. But we have to ask ourselves, do the authorities, the central banks and the governments, have what it takes to get on top of this situation? It's going to be very interesting to watch. What else? Well, we're New Year's Eve now. See you next year. Bye.